Okay, welcome to the last lesson of this PhD course. So I apologize for the continuous changes in the program, but last week I had some problems, so Maurizio Mori substituted me. Before going to this last lesson, let's summarize the the procedure for the exam. And if you have questions, it is the right moment to ask them. As I said, the course was open to PhD students, but also to people who are not PhD students. For the exam and the attendance certificate, it doesn't change anything whether you are in one category or the other. If you want a certificate of attendance and or giving the exam, you have to be registered to the CPEA Society or alternatively to AIDA, as Ioannis Pitas explained last week. For the attendance, as you know, you have to participate to most of the lessons proved in the chat or better in the link, and the exam consists in an article directed to the wider public concerning either your research or other topics of your interest on the impact of AI. If you missed just one or two lessons, is not a problem, but if you didn't attend most of the lessons, the only alternative to give the exam is to make a longer paper. The best papers will be published on the magazine Intelligenza Artificiale. We will take care of the translation, but soon it will be also in English. So, is there other questions? Okay, the article must be written in English. As you know, if you are Italian, in Italian. If you are not Italian and you don't speak English, you make it in English. Then, deadline? No, there is no deadline. We are flexible. You just write an email at some point and propose a topic. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mention the fact that you should first propose a topic via email to be sure that it is relevant. Yes, it can be based on your previous research and work, or even better, because you are more knowledgeable, but it is not on research, but it is on the impact of your research, and must be understandable to most people. You must make an effort for disseminating your work.
Okay. Guido? Another question.
The constraints, length, around 5,000 character, structure like a newspaper article. Then whatever else are you asking? No? Is there any other question?
Yes.
Otherwise, we start.
Guido?
Okay. You must send to Guido. The email is my email, Guido Boella @unito.it. For example, you just look at the Sipeia website, which, alas, it is mostly in Italian. Okay, so let's start with the lesson, finally. Okay, I already reminded you about Magia. Probably I didn't mention that Magia has started some weeks ago a podcast made by our young researchers, besides the newsletter. So the topic of today has a strange title, the three-body problem, and starts from a question that Madhusudan made last lesson. Madhusudan mentioned the famous Chinese room mental experiment of Searle. Sorry. Okay, more questions I will answer at the end. Are you hearing me well?
Yes.
Okay. So at the beginning of the course, I mentioned that the tradition, the first decades of AI adopted a symbolic approach to AI. As you remember, grammatical rules to understand language, semantic networks or formal logic to represent meaning, expert systems to make diagnosis based on rules concerning health, illness, and so on. But besides not working, please mute your microphone. Besides not working, this symbolic approach has been subject to a harsh, definite critique by the philosopher John Searle that we already have mentioned concerning the construction of social reality, probably. Please mute all your microphone. Okay. And the argument is the following one. The critic is against the idea that a computer can really understand language, can, in whatever sense of the term, have a mind. And he tried to rephrase what people were doing in those early decades of AI concerning natural language understanding in a way that makes it clear, apparent, that there is no mind at all involved in AI, in symbolic AI. So the idea is the following one. You have some Chinese mother tongue speakers, and they are in front of a closed door. They don't know what there is inside. They just write some questions in Chinese language with the ideograms and put the sheet of paper with the questions below the door, inside the room. And they receive, after some time, another piece of paper with the answers. So if in the room where an symbolic AI system for natural language understanding, the two Chinese speakers in the drawing would say, oh, in the room there is an intelligent Chinese speaker, or if inside there is a real Chinese speaker. But then the door opens, and inside you find John Searle, who doesn't know anything about the Chinese language, but he was endowed with a big book with rules, grammatical rules, logical rules, and without understanding, without knowing Chinese, was able to produce on the piece of paper to be sent outside, to produce correct answers to the questions in Chinese he received. So the point of John Searle was, well, I'm doing the same thing that a symbolic AI system is doing, managing rules on symbols, logical formulas on further symbols, and so on, till I am able to write down some Chinese ideograms that to the Chinese readers look like correct, relevant answers. But at this point, would you really say that Searle is understanding Chinese? So this is a sort of analogy made with a mental thought experiment, showing an harsh critic towards AI. And this was almost the definite tumble stone on the idea of strong AI, which is not even a term used anymore, where strong and weak AI were distinguishing the fact that you were assuming that a computer with an AI system and a good performance would in some sense be told to have a mind, to have understanding, to reason, to decide. While after this argument, most of people agrees on the fact that AI, symbolic AI, can be only a simulation of the mind. And it was even a meaningful simulation that an entire science, cognitive science, in the 60s emerged from this idea. We cannot, as humans, look inside the brain of other humans, so we cannot study the mind with a medical approach. Whatever the diagnostic exam you are able to do, like magnetic resonance, it explains a lot of things about brain, but it's difficult to say something about the mind. So cognitive science from the 60s assumed symbolic AI as a simulation. If you were able to simulate the mind without pretending that that was a mind, well, you at least can say that our mind can be simulated. You can make a theory of mind starting from the evidence coming from the simulation, assuming that the performances are the same or similar to the performances of humans. This is also called a functionalist approach of the mind, a theory of Jerry Fodor in the 70s. The idea of Fodor was, well, if a system performs like a human, well, you cannot say that that it is necessary to have a brain as a substrate, a so-called wetware, to have cognition. It is sufficient that that the building blocks of the systems, the input and output of the different blocks of the systems representing the mind, behave like the few things we know about our cognition. Nowadays, this Chinese room argument is used against also deep learning. As you remember, we have a distinction. We have artificial intelligence, including both symbolic AI, but also sub-symbolic AI, the so-called neural networks, and in particular today, the successful deep neural networks. So some people argue that if the Chinese room argument is true, it's true also for deep learning, because yes, neural networks are a so-called sub-symbolic model, but at the end they run on a computer, and all computers are made of bits of 0 and 1 moving on some binary logic hardware. So they push the Chinese room argument till they reach the basic of the modern computer, the binary logic of binary circuits, and argue that the Chinese room argument holds for whatever AI system running on a computer. This means that even systems that are exceptional performances like ChatGPT, like the large language models and all the other application of deep learning, cannot be said to have a mind in whatever sense of the term. They are just simulation of our mind. But maybe, and this is the topic of my lesson, we should make a step back and try to see whether the Chinese room argument of Searle applies also to the modern AI based on deep learning, or the exceptional performances of deep learning tell us something more. Chen is asking, does it mean that the computer can only identify Chinese letter and syntax by simulation, but cannot understand their content or semantics? Yes, that was the point of Searle. From syntax, everything is syntax. Everything is symbolic. Then you cannot raise to the semantic level, to the meaning, to understanding the meaning of a sentence. But maybe behind deep neural network, there is something more. And you remember we mentioned the fact that one of the problems of deep neural networks is that they cannot provide an explanation. They are so-called black boxes. They have great performances, but you cannot tell why the picture has been classified as a cat. Or if it is a wrong classification, you cannot argue with the system saying, oh, it is a cat, he is saying meow, or whatever. And it is not clear, despite tens of thousands of people working on so-called explainable AI, it is not clear whether it is possible to have a system that is both performing and able to provide an explanation. And today I'm argue, as part of the wider argument, that maybe we should not even hope that this is a correct wish, having an explanation for all decisions, all classifications made by deep neural networks, even if it seems a challenging statement. And the point, the starting point was, again, the fact that in AlphaGo, the deep neural network system made by Google DeepMind, who won against all the best Go players, has been defined by those players, at least anecdotically, that it looked like we were playing against an alien. What does it mean that that AlphaGo by Google DeepMind is an alien? And we have to make a step back in some centuries to reconstruct something that now it's widely known, but not much considered. Yes, Move 37. Madhusudan is recalling the famous battle with another player, not the one I show you. We all know that weather forecasts are highly uncertain. We see on the app that there will be a sunny weekend, and we get stuck in the situation in the picture. So let's go back at least to Galileo Galilei in the 16th century. Who is one of the fathers of modern science. And he said, sorry, because it is in Italian, the original citation, but I can translate. He argued in the Saggiatore, 1723, philosophy is written in this huge book that is continuously opened in front of us. I call it the universe. But we cannot understand the universe if we don't beforehand understand the language, the characters in which the universe, as a book, is written. The universe is written in mathematical languages, and the characters are triangles, circles, and other geometrical figures. Without these means, the symbols, the geometrical figures, it is impossible even to understand a word from the universe. Without these geometrical figures, it is like running around without a direction in an obscure labyrinth. It is a very strong metaphor, almost directly taken from Dante's Inferno. So what Galileo Galilei meant was that you need mathematics, formulas, to even try to understand what is the universe, what is nature in front of us. He was also meaning something else. He was meaning that the other book, the Bible, was written in natural language, and it was a different matter, a different thing. So you all know the story of Galileo Galilei. So this is the first description of the scientific method. Beforehand, we had, for example, Kepler's law about the movement of celestial bodies. But the methodology was fully developed some decades afterwards by Sir Isaac Newton, who, with the famous universal gravity law, was able to explain with a very, very simple formula, you know, the constant times the product of the masses of the two corps, and divided by the square of the distance between the two bodies. A powerful formula who put together our daily experience, the famous apple falling on the head of Newton, according to the anecdote. The same law is explaining why celestial bodies move according to Kepler's law in a heliocentric perspective. Some decades before, the celestial bodies, the planets, the stars, were almost godly entities. They were part of the divine world. And not even the heliocentric system, revolution of Copernicus and Kepler was able to change their divine nature. And even Galileo Galilei believed that the orbits of the planets were circles rather than ellipses, just before they must be perfect because they were celestial bodies. He refused Kepler and stick to the Pythagorean and Platonic vision of the universe. So Newton really made a big, huge revolution, considering the universe just made of a fixed reference system with points and with laws correlating the movement of the points one with respect to the others. By the way, Newton didn't want to just make science, to invent physics with his Principia Mathematica Philosophiae Naturalis book. He wanted to be, first of all, a biblical scholar to study and interpret the Bible. And secondly, he was also an alchemist. At that point, at that age, there was no distinction between chemistry and alchemy. By the way, this has been discovered also only at the beginning of the past century, when the heirs of Newton sold some old boxes of books of Newton, and we discovered that most of his writing were about the Bible and about alchemy. And even his arch rival Leibniz criticized the universal gravitation law, saying that Newton was applying magic in arguing that the celestial bodies were connected without how is called? Sorry. Without a medium, that there was that gravity creates an effect at distance, which is completely accepted today, but at that point was was a claim very heretic. But we don't care. What is the huge legacy of this idea of Newton, of a scientific world moved by laws expressed, as Galileo said, in mathematics? The full consequences were apparent to some decades afterwards to the French mathematicians Laplace, inventor, for example, of probability theory. He said, he asked the question, how is it possible that even if all entities are respecting the laws of physics, for example, the universal gravitation law of Newton, and still we cannot make exact predictions. We have uncertain prediction, and this is why he started studying statistics and probability. And he argued with another mental experiment that it is just a limitation of knowledge. He said if there was a demon, a natural entity who knew the position of every particle and its movement, then with the complete knowledge, we could produce exact forecasts for the future, applying the laws of physics, but also to reconstruct the past, to give an explanation why we are here, using the same laws. This is the birth of mechanicism, that it is a widespread idea even in the general culture, that the universe is a huge clock subject only to the rules of physics. So it is entirely predictable at all levels, the physics, biology, cognition, and so on. But Newton, as a huge genius, had understood already something more about the consequences, the real consequences of his discoveries. At two levels. The first level is this one. Edmund Halley, the great friends of Newton, and he even financed the Principia Mathematica of Newton, because the Royal Society gave money to other research projects less successful. Halley, you know, is the astronomer who discovered the famous Halley comet coming back to the sun around every 90 years. So he said, yeah, I discovered the comet. I want to know when it will be back. And he asked Newton, who invented the universal gravitation law, to help him to calculate the date when the comet will return. So to prove that the comet was exactly the same one as he saw, and exactly the same one of the other comet seen in the sky 90 years before. And regretfully and ungratefully, Newton refused to help Edmund Halley, despite his debts toward Halley. But there is a reason, because Newton knew that to calculate the orbit of the comet coming back to the sun, you have to take into account the gravitational effect of the other planets. Okay, it doesn't seem such a difficult task, Jupiter, Saturn. Well, they didn't know about Uranus, Pluto, and so on. But Newton was aware that Jupiter and Saturn move around their orbit. So you have to remake the calculations about the orbit of the comet at each step, at each movement of the other celestial bodies. And this was not much possible, so he refused. It was too complex. Actually, less than 1 century afterwards, some French mathematicians and aristocrats made more or less correct calculations. Alas, Edmund died before the return of his comet. But this is just one level of complexity. Newton even had another intuition that it is impossible to make forecasts for systems even if they are regulated by very simple laws like the universal gravitation law. And this is, he anticipated by looking at irregularities in the orbit of the moon, who depended not only on the gravity of the Earth, but also on the gravity on the sun. He understood that the so-called three-body problem, even if the term is probably 200 years afterward. And you all know about the three-body problem, because if you didn't read the book of Cixin Liu, you probably have seen the TV series. And what was the problem of the Santi aliens on their planet, and why they want to come and take over our planet? Because they had three stars, a system with three stars, so it was too complicated to make forecasts. And this explained the strange scenes in the movie where there is a unexpected and complete change of season from desert weather to ice age in a few time and unpredictably. So if you have only two bodies, they gravitate not one around the other, but around the sun, the center of mass, the sum of their masses. But if you have three bodies, well, for a while you can make forecasts. After some temporal horizon, you cannot say anything about them. At some point, at this point, you should be a little scared, because our star, the sun, probably will last billions of years, but we are more than two bodies in the solar system. So after some temporal horizon, we don't know exactly what will happen to our orbits, the orbits of our planet and on the other planets of the solar system. This idea that there is a stronger connection between all the elements of our universe has been identified several times. For example, by the German philosopher Fichte, who said, even if a single grain of sand would be in a different place, then our universe would be completely different. Or Alan Turing, who said, even if a single electron, because they made progresses in science, even a single electron would be in a different position, all the entire universe, as we know it, would be different. And this is the so-called, this effect is the so-called effect of the chaos theory, discovered in the 70s by the Edward Lorenz, weather scientist, who said the famous sentence that you all know. I leave the floor to you. You can get it from the figure.
The wings of the butter.
Please.
Butterfly effect.
Yeah, the butterfly effect, yeah.
And the sentence is, do or does? Does a flip of the wings of a butterfly in Brazil set off a hurricane in Texas or something like that? Question marks. Surely not. This is just an hyperbole, and it is actually the title of a children's book. But it gives a good idea of the theory of chaos, where very small differences in the beginning situation bring to huge disproportionate differences in the outcome, in the evolution of the system. So even a butterfly flip of wings could have disproportionate effect, because the world is not linear. The world is chaotic, is complex. Why I'm telling you all these? Well, first of all, why systems are chaotic and complex? Because, sorry for the Italian slide, because these systems are made by more than one agent influencing each other with different factors, and the agent interact one with the other. The agent adapt to the environment. They provide the feedback to the changes. They change their behavior as their environment change, but they have to make the decisions for the change, for the adaptation, only basing on local information. And this is why there are systems which are very complex, like chess or Go, but they are not chaotic, because you know every part of the state. But in physics, or even more in biology, every cell, multiple agents, cells, they adapt. Yes, they have a metabolism, but they adapt reacting only to local information. Every cell of our body just look around itself and adapt, but it doesn't know anything about the overall body of ours. And so we go back to AI finally. What happens? Neural networks, deep neural networks, are able to model, to make forecasts in the three-body problem. More, they are able to do better forecasts than we do. Again, Google DeepMind. With GraphCast, which is already old, now we have GenCast, Gen from generative AI, because it incredibly uses the same diffusion algorithm of, not of large language model, but of DALL-E and other image generation systems. And what is the difference between GraphCast, GenCast, and the traditional weather forecast system made, for example, by ECMWF, an institute, a physics institute in Bologna, where hundreds of physics scholars make equations, complex equations, to model our planet, the water in the seas, in the rivers, the humidity in the clouds, the movement of air causing wind, and so on. They put the model in a huge supercomputer, and they have to wait days to have the forecasts for the next days. By the way, these slides refer to the fact that also ECMWF resorted now to the neural network mechanism that, as we explained at the beginning, doesn't know anything. As a diagnostic system, doesn't know anything about brain, stomach, and whatever, blood. Here, these systems don't know anything about water, rivers, wind, clouds, rain. They just start from the weather relevant variables: humidity, level of rain, temperature, and so on. And using an history of this data, here this system from 1979, but GenCast uses even a very smaller time frame to make accurate prediction. They make predictions that are better than human ones. In particular, they are better in most severe events like tornado, hurricanes, and so on. And why this is possible? We don't know. I have still to mention the Nobel Prize, AlphaFold 3, who is given to a Sabis and Jumper of Google DeepMind and another scholar for another thing, for being able to predict the structure, the three-dimensional structure of proteins. That, you know, these structures are what is interesting in protein, because the pharmaceutical properties depend on the structure, and that determines the interaction with other proteins. But it is unpredictable, almost unpredictable, or very difficult to predict from the sequence of amino acids defining the protein. And instead, AlphaFold 3 is successful to make this, which is another chaotic and complex system, because to take this fancy structure, you have to calculate hundreds of chemical links. You have to compute the distribution of the energy and minimize it. You have to take into account the environment where the protein is folding. So at all levels, reality, so the physical reality, the astronomy reality, the weather reality, but also the biological reality, are all chaotic and complex systems, which means that you cannot model them with a finite analytic system. That means you cannot write dozens of complicated equations and find a solution which provides you with a prediction. What you at most can do is, like meteorologists up to some months ago, that make approximations by making simulations on computers. So not only deep learning is able to have incredible performances, almost increasingly better than humans, but they do this in the complicated problems, the ones where you have systems which are chaotic and complex. And then we have to make a step further, because we started with cognitive science, with our cognition, with the study of the mind. We cannot pretend that our mind is not a complex and chaotic system, because it depends on the brain. The brain is part of the biology, and thus it is a chaotic and complex system. And we in doing this further step in my argument, we focus on language. Before this, we have to remind you the notion of fractal, which is a geometrical figure with infinite self-similarity. And it is something strictly connected to chaos theory, but we don't go beyond this. You all know about fractals. Take a cauliflower and you see that it has, or take just a tree, and you see that it has the same structure repeated again and again. And also it is emerging that our health is strictly related to a good level of fractality. Just take, for example, this figure on the left. You have a normal lung, which looks like a tree, so it is a fractal, and a ugly lung of people suffering from asthma. And the first thing you see, even if you are not a doctor, that the fractality structure, the fractality level of this organ with a disease is not the same as the fractal level of a normal lung. What else? I was saying, and these systems are increasingly surpassing the human baselines in many tasks. Language understanding, comprehension, image classification, and just a little behind in mathematics. We all know it is difficult. Just curiosity, if you, this drawing is made by, this person, famous artist.
Jackson Pollock.
Jackson Pollock.
Exactly. And how do you distinguish an original Pollock painting from a painting that all of us can do just taking a big brush and dripping colors on some sheet on the ground? Well, it turns out that the level of fractality of an original Pollock is higher than paintings made by people who was trying to do the same. Please, if you want to say something. So it was just a connection between chaos and complex theory and cognition, also art. But we will focus on a special case of cognition, which is large language models. Here I tried to make a fractal out of character with not much success, as you see. By the way, but just too technical for me, it turns out that also the parameters, the weights, the trillions of weights inside a neural network during their training assume a fractal character. But just won't just evoke this fact. It is too complicated to explain for me. Alessio is drawing too fast a conclusion, but I believe he's right. The conclusion then is that AI can make suitable or sufficiently good Pollock paintings or whatever else, but we will go back to this point. I already explained you how large language models learn. You remember the next token prediction trick. You take the ChatGPT takes the first sentence, the cat eats the mouse, remove the mouse, and start guessing and adjusting its huge deep neural network till it is able to solve whatever quiz about completing a sentence in his training set made of all sentences in all languages downloaded from the web, copyrighted stuff. included. So why I recall this? Because it turns out that language, natural language, has a chaotic and complex and even fractal character. This has been already understood some years ago, where it has been seen that if you take an good old-fashioned AI for natural language processing, even using, for example, Markov models and other statistical approaches, so flexible AI, you produce a text that is different from a real text, because it doesn't respect some statistical laws of language, zip and ips law. I don't say more details, which are laws about how words are distributed in a text. And instead, if you take a neural language model, a small large language model, you see that it is able not only to produce a relevant answer, a relevant text, an answer, but the distribution of the words in the output of the neural network respects these statistical laws. So actually, neural networks with respect to symbolic models imitate better reality. They don't only perform better, give correct answer, better answers, but they do it exactly like a human in the sense of the distribution of words in the text. But small neural networks cannot do something else, but we will see it in a moment. Yes, the thing is that I put myself in the group as I had been working for many years on natural language processing with the symbolic AI methodology. We should have all asked one question. How is this possible that the natural world, but also the social world, because I didn't mention it, but social phenomena like traffic, like finance, are chaotic and complex systems? That's why it's difficult to make intelligent traffic lights to win on the stock exchange easily, because they are unpredictable. A very minor difference creates a very big different effect. So how it is possible that we are able to represent the natural and social world using language which is just a linear sequence of characters? The other phenomena are complex, are high-dimensional. Language is one-dimensional, and still we are able to mirror complex reality straight into a linear sequence of symbols. This means that in language, like in fractal, there is more information due to the connections. Even each character, each morphological item, each grammatical item is not just correlated with the words nearby or the character nearby. It is correlated with the entire text it belongs to. Words are correlated to sentences, sentences to paragraphs, paragraphs to chapters to entire books. And this is emerging only now thanks to large language models, who are able, as you know, given a text, to produce the most probable continuation of the text. So they really work as particle accelerators in physics. They provide a huge microscope to to look at the language not at the micro level, but at the macro level, and understand the long-range correlation flowing from high linguistic level, the book, the chapter, down to words or even letters. And this having correlation at arbitrarily long scale is a signature of chaos and complex theory, because it is what fractals are. If you take a small branch, it has the same structure of the entire tree. So there is a long range correlation. While Chomskyan grammars on which symbolic AI was based were so-called context, they were based on a local context. Even context-free grammar from Chomsky, which looked a little wider context in the same sentence, were too difficult to be managed with symbolic AI. You have to use context-free sentences. Just look at the nearby words. So the idea of making ChatGPT using grammatical rules was in reality doomed from the beginning. And this explains why ChatGPT and friends are so successful. Because language has a fractal structure, so it is self-similar. There are predictable dependencies at long range, and thus, as all chaotic and complex systems, deep neural networks are very good at modeling them. This is too technical, but we also, knowing this, allow us to understand the miracle of next token prediction, because as I already explained you, ChatGPT learns by solving a quiz on a single token. A token is not even a word, it's a part of the word. And despite learning to predict piece of words, it is able to extend the prediction to an entire PhD thesis. You give the articles, all the state of the art on some topic, in terms of articles, book in input, and you get your PhD thesis in output, or at least part of it. Surely you get the bachelor thesis out. How is it possible? It learns from single local predictions, next token predictions, and it is able to scale the prediction at the level of an entire book, or an entire thesis. So to work in this way, there must be something more in the language that we have all ignored up to now. And this is the fractal structure of language. It is self-similar, and there are long-range correlations. So if you learn locally, you can apply the same knowledge globally. And that's why the simple next token prediction algorithm is able to work at all levels. So where are we arrived now, and which are the next steps in the argument? We know that deep neural networks are good at modeling, are making predictions in chaotic and complex systems that have a fractal structure. We know that language has a fractal structure, and thus we can understand why large language models, which are based on deep neural network, have good performances. But this does not this is not an answer to our original question. Does the Chinese room argument applies also to modern AI based on deep neural networks? Because after all, the 0 and 1s in a computer are symbols. We need another step in the argument. And the step is that these systems are not only better at understanding and predicting chaotic and complex reality. You said chaotic and complex systems cannot be modeled by mathematical formulas, so not even logical formulas. So traditional AI was doomed from the point of view of performance, not only from the point of view of creating a mind like Searle argued it was not possible. Now, at least the first thing has been made. Systems, AI systems with deep neural networks able to have very good performances. But we have this last step. Is a deep neural network still at some point only a symbolic system because it is based on a computer? And the answer is obviously no. There is something more, because another property of chaotic and complex system is so-called emergence. Biology cannot be explained completely by chemistry. Life is an additional level beyond biology, and in the same way, our mind is something more with respect to our brain, and this is a fact of nature. We have emergence of different phenomena from more simple ones. They cannot be reduced to simple ones. And if mind is an emergent phenomenon, then maybe deep neural networks are showing emergence of something, maybe not of the mind, but they are at least more similar to our mind than symbolic AI. And the proof that there is emergence is exactly how large language model works. I already said, from next token prediction, you can produce an entire PhD thesis as the most probable continuation of the text in input. Or, even more, next token prediction was not meant to allow translation, and instead, translation, which is an emergent cognitive property, came out from next token prediction. But also reasoning is emerging. You know, O3, DeepSeek, E3, sorry, 3 of Google, of ChatGPT, DeepSeek are reasoning models, and no one taught them how to reason. It is another emerging property. Large language models are able to understand common sense reasoning. They are, what else? They are able to play chess at quite a good level if you make the right question to them. So it seems, and this is disruptive for the argument of Searle, it seems that deep neural networks are not only able to model, to make predictions in chaotic and complex systems, but they are actually in the field of cognition showing the same emergence of new capabilities that has our brain. So it reopens, this is just a first intuition, and it reopens the door to the argument about strong AI. Is AI just simulating our mind, as cognitive scientists believed after Searle, or it is doing something more? Because deep neural networks make emerge cognitive capabilities in the same way our cognition emerges from the brain. So it's an open question, but it is one of really big importance. Keeping in another part of the argument is the following one. In reality, we already knew many of the things I said, because Michael Polanyi, already in the 60s, famous chemistry, philosopher, economist from Hungary, who moved the last century to UK, and whose greatest contribution is the idea of tacit knowledge. What is tacit knowledge according to Polanyi? He said, our intelligence is split in two parts. One is the so-called explicit knowledge, explicit in the sense that it can be described linguistically. And so, for example, also science, which is made of formulas, is part of the explicit dimension. Since we can explain it verbally, we are conscious of our explicit knowledge. So it's a knowledge about how the world is, of categories and so on. But Polanyi says, that the biggest part of our mind is not explicit. It is rather tacit. Tacit in the sense that it cannot be expressed linguistically, and thus it is not entirely accessible to our conscience. The simplest example is knowledge about how to make things in the physical world. Take riding a bicycle. How do you learn riding a bicycle? Well, you don't need physics, because if someone explains you that the angle in which you are falling with your bicycle is inversely proportional to the velocity or to the speed of the bicycle, which means if you are falling, you must pedal more, you must accelerate. It is completely useless. You learn riding a bicycle by attempt and failure till you're able to go straight. But Polanyi says it is more than this. It is not just the physical reality. It is the perception. It is emotions which are part of the tacit knowledge. And this explains why, for example, it is difficult to describe taste. If you take the label behind a bottle of wine, you find words, obviously, like red, you maybe you say it sweet like fruit, but then you find other kind of words, right? Like road, ruvid, and so on, because you are not able to express linguistically taste in all its aspects. So you resort to metaphors from other domains of perception. Again, emotions. Why it is difficult to have relationship with people? Because emotions are part of our tacit knowledge. It is difficult to become conscious, to manage them, let alone to understand the emotion of other people and to manage them. But Polanyi already said, and we ignored as a symbolic AI community, that also language, that also reasoning are based on tacit knowledge. And indeed, you don't know to go to school to talk. You talk quite well already before going to elementary school and knowing some grammar rules. Or at the first year of our computer science bachelor degree, we teach logic. Do we teach logic to make our students more intelligent in reasoning? No way. It's just to understand how binary logic works in digital circuits. So we already knew many things, and probably tacit knowledge was exactly the chaotic and complex part of our mind that is not possible to represent in an analytical way with rules or logical formulas. So, no, this argument was a little was very complex, but we are entering probably in a new situation where we can make predictions without knowing the reason, which is quite a strange word, because we were able up to now to create the predictions with mathematical formulas, with science, and so to have an explanation at the same time of a prediction. But vice versa, this system based on deep neural network are not able to provide explanation, because in principle it is not possible to provide explanations for chaotic and complex systems, but they provide very good performances because they, in a sense, imitate the chaotic and complex character of reality, including the emergence of new phenomena. And we have at least a proof that this is true from the fact that large language model start from next token prediction, and from this simple task emerge new levels of cognition, translation, reasoning, and so on. So it is a new world to be studied from scratch, with also possible consequences in other fields of also philosophy, not just philosophy of mind. And for example, some scholars are looking whether in the field of ethics there are theories that go in this way. And they have found that, for example, within the world of feminist philosophy, there are authors, first of all, Carol Gilligan, in a different voice, challenged the idea that ethics can be based on general universal rules, as explained Professor Maurizio Mori. If you take the ontological ethics from Kant with the universals, what is a rule can be ethical if it can be transformed in a general rule holding for everyone, but also utilitaristic ethics, where you have to compute which is the best outcome for everyone, have again a general universal character. But we have seen that since the universal gravitation law, universal laws are not able to manage complex systems, and our society is a chaotic complex system, the set of relationship about people. And what does Carol Gilligan propose as a solution? Propose the ethics of care, saying, well, the relationships with other people start from the mother-child relation. Mothers take care of their children. they take care of the family, and each situation is different from any other situation. So you cannot make an ethical judgment which is general. You have to start from the particulars, from the differences, which is exactly as a structure the same kind of reasoning that deep neural networks are able to do. They being able to model a chaotic and complex system means also being able to give the right, the correct attention to the particulars, because particulars matters. The butterfly whip of wings seems irrelevant, and instead it has a much wider effect than expected. It sets off a hurricane somewhere else. So I would stop here. This is just the citation of the paper from which my lesson started, if you are curious, but then I put together much more argument. So I have to leave 5 minutes before 1 o'clock, so maybe it's time to start discussion. We already have one question. Giovanni, what would be the space left for reasoning in such a context? What do you mean exactly?
Hi there. Yes, I mean, if we arrive to a situation where the explanation is not even possible, because we are talking about chaotic and complex systems, then in this context, what will be the space left for reasoning, and also for take for as an assumption that reasoning is a specific dimension, is a specific property of humans. I can even extend my questions to what's the space left for humanity in this context.
No. The thing must be seen at the opposite way. So you are right. The question is right. What is the space left for reasoning? Well, remind what we said at the beginning on chaotic systems. You cannot predict beyond a certain horizon. We can predict that the moon will be there tomorrow because we are within this horizon. But if we want to make a prediction where is the moon in 1 million years, it's not clear whether it will be still there, because it is more than two-body problem, and thus even with supercomputers which simulate and approximate the universal gravitational law, we cannot make predictions. So this is the first thing. There is an horizon where we live and we can reason. And indeed, we are successful for this reason, because we are moving within this horizon. Science works. Science works, but up to a point. In extreme case, like weather forecast, science works for tomorrow, maybe, and not so well. So this is the first thing. Then the other part of the question, which is even more interesting, which is the space for our humanity. No, the thing is, we should be aware that our humanity is wider than reasoning, than science. Because, and as I said, we already knew from at least Polanyi in the 60s. Polanyi, the real aim of Polanyi is not to do philosophy of mind. The real aim of Polanyi was philosophy of science. His main argument, and this is the explanation of the title personal knowledge, which are the foundations of science itself. And he says science is founded on tacit knowledge. So the part which is less conscious, which is a chaotic system. And to make the argument simple is, when there is a shift of paradigm, let's say from Earth at the center of the universe or to Sun at the center of the universe, you have a logical gap. And the logical gap cannot be filled by logic, so it must be filled by something else. What else? The tacit knowledge, which has all the other effects that we are saying. So the point is to reconsider what means to be human. And now that we have a system that don't provide explanation, but at least show that it is possible to do something more that we were able to do, for example, with symbolic AI. So we are really opening a new door to understand, to have a better understanding of ourselves with a model which does not provide explanation, but still it is useful to get a glimpse on what we are. And also, as I said, the paper about fractality of language, they use large language models not to look within the large language model to make analysis of the weight of the neural network. They use the large language model to have statistics about words. And from that statistics, they proved that language has a fractal character, which beforehand was just approximated and with not so big evidence. Francesco, why do we discuss about mind-related properties, intelligent understanding thinking, for something that does not have even a body? As far as I know, in neuroscience, dualism has been refuted. Yes, it's true, but there are two things. First, there is the field of embodied robotics, where cognition of these robots is strictly connected and emerges from the body. So, in practice, we are, in the future, probably we will be able to have artificial intelligences based on a body. So we don't go back to dualism. And the other reply is that these systems, yes, are in a sense simulating something, but they are simulating at this point also emergence of cognition, not just the input-output at the functionalist level as AI, symbolic AIs was pretending. Matteo, if you cannot understand or predict a behavior, how can you be sure that results provided by the neural system are correct? There is no way to correlate input and output. Well, I guess you are meaning generating the... No, it's not clear. Let's go on with the question. How can be sure that given a specific training data set, the system will not replicate amplify biases? Yes, that's for sure. They replicate, amplify biases, but still, if there is an emergence of a new level, maybe the system itself can do something about the biases, because if you just make a reply, like a basic large language model, you just replicate, amplify biases, as you say. But if also reasoning is emerging within large language models, then they can maybe start reason also about whether they have biases or not. What about responsibility? Is AI responsible? Yeah, that's the huge question. But responsibility is a term related to many aspects, to, for example, religious aspects. You made a crime and you go to hell. Or responsibility is connected to learning. They put criminals into jail, not for punishment, but to make them learn. Not clear whether it works or not, this solution. But in both cases, how responsibility can be applied to an AI. Surely not the religious sense. From the learning point of view, you don't put to make the neural network learn. You simply provide the example where it failed, and after some iteration, it learns. And probably, and moreover, take traffic accident. Many traffic accident is because you are distracted, you are drunk, or whatever. My intuition that in a world where there will be a lot of autonomous systems, we have also to revise the notion of responsibility. There will be no responsible. These are the systems that are the state of the art, learning from millions of items in the data set. They can be retrained on the new cases. So why you should say that they are responsible? Probably they have just to pay the damages, but this is the task of insurances. Alessio, this approach will change with the future omnis and general AI. AGI, I guess is meaning. AGI is mostly a marketing term. After this lesson, one sure conclusion is that we really know very few things about intelligence yet. So pretending to create a system and say that it is a general intelligent AI is really premature. But surely, if the technology is the same, the problems will be the same. It will be just that instead of creating just explicit knowledge, to use the term of Polanyi, like symbolic AI was doing, we are increasingly being able to model all the other part of our cognition, which we ignored, the tacit knowledge, which we ignored because it is less accessible to consciousness, because it is a part of a chaotic and complex system, which, as we said, cannot be modeled with a finite analytical system, with a set of formulas, mathematical formulas. So we avoided, we gave up, in a sense, in the sense of symbolic AI scientist. There was the tacit knowledge, but we could not. So we focus on what we focused, coming back to what means to be human, we focused on the explicit knowledge. And if being ethical is part of our being humans, well, we are in trouble, because up to now we focused on universal ethics, which were made of general formulas, and maybe there are instead other solutions. And philosophers, before knowing AI, I guess she is from the 80s, as a book. The book has been written by Carol Gilligan in the 80s, if I'm not wrong, before, let's say, modern AI. Other questions? Otherwise, I go back to the exam, because there were some questions. Yes, okay, you can find in the recording the instructions, but to summarize, and then I close. To get a certificate of attendance or give an exam, you don't need to be a PhD student. You only need to be registered, to be subscribed to subscribe to CPEA or to AIDA, for those from AIDA universities. You write me an email. No, for the certificate you will receive, because in the original subscription form registration form, you said whether you need it. If you didn't do it, just drop me an email. For the exam is an article for the general public, like in a newspaper, of around 5,000 characters, not word characters, so it's like 2 pages, on the impact on AI on some topic of your interest. Preferably, if you are working on AI, the topic of your research, but not the content of the research, the impact of the research explained to lay people, not to scientists, not to other scientists. And the best one will be published and translated, if necessary, for the magazine magia.news, magazine intelligence artificiale. What else? For people who did not attend most of the lessons, the solution is to make a longer article. Any other questions? Otherwise, I really warmly thank you, all of you. It has been very nice to make a worldwide course on ethics on AI to receive your points of view from different parts of the world. On the sipeia.it website, you will find in a few days all the recordings. And for whatever other thing, just drop me an email. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Grazie.
Thank you.
Arrivederci.
Thank you.